Welcome to the Athletic Foundations Workshop Series. I'm here with John Armstrong of John Armstrong Clothier. He's here to lead you through how to dress for specific occasions and how to read between the lines.
Thanks, DJ. So business dress codes used to be pretty clear-cut and straightforward. It was easy to understand. Business dress implied a dark suit, a white shirt, and a simple tie, and then something equally dressy for women. But in fact, if you remember, IBM used to be the standard for corporate culture, and they were famous to require a dark suit, either a charcoal or a navy, a white shirt, and a red tie. And you see some examples of dress clothing here that are perfect for those business occasions where you really need to look your best, whether it's an important business meeting or maybe it's that interview where you're trying to land the job. And the thing about business dress code in those days was it was real simple to understand, and you always knew if you were dressed appropriately for the occasion, because there was not a lot of room for interpretation. And then things changed where you began hearing dress code descriptions like business casual, and maybe the company that you're interviewing with or going to work for says that they have a business casual attire. What does that mean exactly? Well, we're going to talk about some of the things that means, because it doesn't mean the same thing everywhere, and that's why it's confusing, and that's why you need to give some thought to what you're going to wear in those environments. I want to talk about some other dress codes, such as you get an invitation that says black tie optional. What do you wear for that? And we'll talk about some of that as we go. So these are some examples of business casual. And for this, I'd like to ask DJ to join us. DJ, when I think of business casual, that could mean anywhere from khakis and a polo shirt through something that you would see here with a jacket, a tie, and pocket square, and in this case, in a vest. It doesn't mean any of those things unless you decide that it does. And so, because it's so open to interpretation, that's where, number one, it creates the greatest opportunities for missteps, but also where it creates the opportunities for expression. And so what I did was put together some outfits here that show different ways to approach business casual. And normally when I think of business casual, I think of a jacket with or without a tie. And so you could easily lose the tie here, have this jacket and that nice Glen plaid shirt, and you have a polished business casual look. You still look like you're meant to come to work, but it's a little more relaxed without the tie, potentially. You see several examples like that. You could even change it up for a more casual, like for a weekend or a Friday business casual. I like something like this lambskin jacket, the denim shirt, with or without a neckerchief. And this one is, quite a bit different look from that, but they both, I think you would agree that they all look professional.
No, they do. The one question that came to mind, you mentioned maybe this is for, call it a Friday or the weekend. Why not during the week business casual there?
Well, I think it would be. I think anytime you dress like that, you look like you intended to show up for work. I remember working with a client who was a very successful, very intelligent lawyer, and I went to go see him on his first business Friday years ago, and he had a golf shirt that was right out of the dryer. It was badly wrinkled and rumpled, and he had always, that was before performance fabrics. They were all cotton,
right,
and it looked absolutely terrible. And I remember talking to him about it, and he said, I had no idea what to put on this morning. And that's where people find themselves sometimes.
Right.
If you make it a point to elevate your style slightly above the minimum, then you can't go wrong.
MTE more than expected. So when to tie, when not to tie?
I think that's purely a personal decision. I like a tie. I think everybody looks good in a tie. And I do want to talk about how some of the rules of ties, and this is probably a good time to do that.
Okay.
When you're in need of a tie, wearing a tie, whether it's with a suit or in business casual environment, two things to keep in mind. And one is to tie the knot so that you've got a dimple right in the center on the underside of the knot. That dimple takes a little bit of work, but once you do it the very first time,
Right.
it tends to find its way back, in subsequent times. The other thing is how long to tie the tie. And generally speaking, if the waistband is here, you want that tie to reach just below the top of the waistband. You don't want it to be either too short or too long, but it should just cover the top of the waistband. And that way you don't have unnecessary breaks in the visual image that you're projecting.
Gotcha. What about colors? Any colors to stay away from business casual or?
Not necessarily, but this is the thing. And women have a wider range of colors to choose from.
Okay.
It's very unusual that you would see a professional man wearing a pink jacket at the office or, bright red or something like that. Women can do that very professionally and look great. So men typically are going to wear grays, blues, or some shade of earth tone,
Gotcha.
whether it's a tan, brown, or olive. Dark grays, light grays, medium grays, same thing for blue and the browns, all work well. The main thing and the main consideration there is as long as it's seasonally appropriate, meaning more fall-oriented things in the fall and winter, lighter weight, or more summer, light warm weather things for the spring and summer. But the most important consideration is how the color looks on you, the individual. And by that, some people look better in dark colors. Some people look good in lighter colors. Some people can wear either. But that's an important thing to know. That's an important thing to find out. And if you don't know yourself, ask somebody who does have good taste. And that's where your professional clothier can help you.
Right, like yourself.
Yeah. So DJ, I want to mention shoes because when you're wearing a suit, either charcoal or a navy suit, which we talked about was your dressier business suits, you ought to wear a shoe and belt that are, number one, the same color. They should be, the shoe and the belt should nearly match. And you need a shoe that's dressy enough for the clothing that you're wearing. And typically that means a lace-up.
Right.
Like this is a cap-toe lace-up. It's a very classic business shoe. And that shoe is good for a navy or a charcoal suit, either in black or in this dark brown choice. With more casual clothing, you want a little more casual shoe.
Okay.
Like, for example, those would be a little too dressy for the business casual looks that we were talking about. So for business casual, one idea is a loafer, like the slip-on in a very classic penny loafer styling. Again, either brown or in burgundy or in black. And that's more appropriate for the more casual clothing.
Right.
There are a few styles that are transitional, meaning they're dressy enough for a suit and still look great with business casual, like this shoe. This shoe is pebble grain, split toe, blucher style, and this shoe is appropriate enough, dressy enough to wear with a suit, but it's also great looking with business casual, even with jeans. And one of the differences is the dressier cap toe is a balmoral style, meaning that it closes at the bottom. The throat is closed at the bottom of the laces. This one is a blucher style. It's open, and that does lend a little more casual expression to the shoe.
I had never noticed that. That's awesome.
The other category of clothing I want to talk about was, what do you do if you get an invitation to the wedding or to a wedding and it says the dress is black tie optional? What does that really mean? What if it just says black tie?
Right.
And so let's talk about that a little bit too.
Not just who might consume this, but even to help coaches in, should I look at this person as a serious candidate. You see what I'm saying? Like, just knowing how to dress goes both ways for the employer and employee. I feel like there's, for instance, my first interview, the interviewer could not give me, the interviewee, a clear picture of what to wear. And I don't think it was out of trying to confuse me or to play a game and see how I would show up. I think they didn't know.
Probably just hadn't thought about it.
Right.
And people sometimes say, well, why should I care so much about, the clothing that I wear? Isn't the quality of my work more important? And I think, in the long run, probably is.
Right.
But you have to get to a point where they can see the quality of your work. And the way to get there is to make a great first impression. And so let's talk about the interview a little bit, the job interview in particular. I think that I like to think of it in terms of packaging.
Right.
In manufacturers spend an awful lot of resources packaging their products so that we'll perceive it a certain way.
Right.
There was a research study done at Ohio State that I was reading about, and they said that on average, 10% of the price we pay for a product at retail is the cost of the packaging.
Wow.
And that means, and they said that sometimes it's up to 40% or more of what you're paying actually going for that package that you're probably going to discard.
Right.
But it presents the package or the product in a way that they find favorable and that you as a consumer would find favorable. And for an example of that, look at your latest iPad or iPhone that you purchased. Apple does pays a lot of attention to the packaging of those products. And I think it just goes to the recognition that how you present yourself and how you look has an awful lot to do with what people assume about you. And in an instant, people are judging us in based on how you look and how you present yourself. They're making judgments about your competence, your expertise, your seriousness as a candidate, and your education and all those other things. So I think how we present ourselves in an interview or in another business, maybe a sales call.
Right.
You get a job as a sales rep and you're making a sales call. 30 years ago, I called on a customer who became a very good customer, and he made the comment. He said, when I was in sales, you'd never make a sales call without a white shirt. And he said, one day I did. And the customer, my prospective customer, sent me back to the office. He said, come back when you're dressed for work.
Oh, wow. So
people do care what you look like.
Oh, that's great to hear.
So we'll also talk about business casual and what to wear in an environment that's not quite so dressy and starched. And you notice we sell fragrances and we sell grooming products, and it's because those are important parts of the total package, right?
Right.
But no, for a business setting, for an interview in particular, less is more when it comes to fragrance. I like a light fragrance, even in a situation like that, but I definitely don't want that to be the thing that they remember.
Right. Okay. Gotcha.
You don't want the fragrance to speak more loudly than you do. And so tone that down. But I do think grooming is really important. And, my son is in college was interviewing for an internship for this summer recently, and he called me to talk about what to wear for the interview. And it was great because he had the clothing, but he just wasn't sure what to wear.
Right.
And we took into account the type of company it is, the type of corporate culture that they have, and how the interviewers would be dressed.
Right.
And he tried to mirror that.
Awesome.
And that's a really good rule of thumb.
Okay, so mirror your interviewer.
Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah. Could you speak to culture and when what?
Well, the dress code sort of lays that out, but again, there's so much ambiguity in those terms. I I've seen party invitations, for example, that might say smart casual.
Right.
Nobody knows what that means. Even the person who says it, they don't know what that means.
Right.
So I think you have to rely on good judgment and try to, in my way of thinking, dress better than you think the minimum is.
Right.
And maybe, maybe that's the target.
I got you. I had an idea. Is there ever a time where you might get away with having, call it, 2 jackets with you, and one that's more formal or dressy, and then one that's, call it, business casual?
Well, for years,
you set yourself up.
For years, I've known people who always kept a navy blazer and a tie behind the door,
right.
Even if they dressed more casually than that at work. If they had a client come in unexpectedly, or if they had a client show up in a suit when they were thinking that they wouldn't,
right.
Then they always have that backup to up their game a little bit.
Gotcha.
So, yeah, I mean, I've never done that, but I've certainly heard of people doing that. To my personal way of looking at
right.
things like that, I always think that somebody has to set the bar,
right.
And I'd rather be the best dressed guy in the room or at the party than the guy that people are looking at thinking he didn't realize that this was an event. I would rather be a little overdressed than underdressed every time.
Right.
There's a lot of talk about how things should fit, and every person gets to make that call for himself. But one of the things that I would caution them against is overdoing the extreme.
Gotcha.
Meaning, if the person that you'll be seeking to influence,
right.
I think you ought to dress for the person that you're seeking to influence.
Okay.
If it's an interviewer, if it's a prospective customer, if it's someone that you hope to, gain an opportunity with,
right.
You shouldn't let your clothing distract from the message. Okay. So the clothing should be there to support the message. If you want to present yourself as a, clean-cut, professional, conservative person, that typically would mean a more classic fit as well.
Okay.
Now, these days, especially younger people, prefer a more modern fit with trimmer legs and trimmer fitting coat. Maybe, tighter coat, maybe even a shorter jacket. And those things are fine. We fit customers how they want to be fitted.
Right.
So depending on, the customer, we're happy to make the clothing either way. But what I will say is, if it's a distraction to the person that you're trying to influence, then it's probably not a good choice.
Right.
It should be something that's less extreme.
Okay.
And, sometimes that has to do with the age of that person, but not always.
Right. Okay. That's awesome. That's great to know.
Yeah.
No, well, John, thank you. I really appreciate your expertise. And if you could let everyone know where to find you or to get more information, gain some insight, if you could let them know, share that with them, and I'll make sure to include it as well. Sure.
It's been great having you in the shop today, and I appreciate you being here. I can be reached in our store at 1901 6th Avenue North in Birmingham. We're in the bottom floor of the Harbor Plaza. My phone number is 205-453-4673.
Okay.
And our website is johnarmstrongclothier.com.
Okay. Awesome, John. Well, I appreciate it, as always.
Great to see you, DJ.
You too.